This episode of Warp Factor 10 is brought to you by, well, of course, you. If you want to learn more about how you can support the show, go to patreon.com/thearena_podcast. Hey everyone, welcome into Warp Factor 10, our all things Star Trek show, where we're talking about Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Season 1, Episode 2 today. On today's episode, I'm your host, Expat, along with my co-host, Burly of Burlyman Gaming. Burly, how you doing, man?
I'm doing okay.
Uh-huh.
Thanks to the stupid government, they changed it like 10 years ago that the heat has to be put in my apartment going till the middle of June.
Oh, goodness.
So I have to have my air conditioning and stuff in, even though like today it's not too bad outside, but I have to have my air running because my apartment's cook, or else my apartment cooks.
I see.
How are you?
So I'm doing good. I'm getting better from the third vaccine, a corona vaccine that I got, late last week. So, it's kind of the past 4 days kind of been up and down. But yeah, this evening I'm feeling like 100% again. So it's good. So, yeah. Episode 2, we're going to be talking about. And before we get into things, though, I just want to warn everybody, this is a spoiler-filled review episode. So Burly and we're going to be throwing out a bunch of spoilers, obviously, as we review the episode and talk about it and give our opinions on it. So if you have not watched the episode yet, please go and watch it first and then come and watch our review episode here. So with that warning, let's go ahead and get started, Burly. So, Children of the Comet. So I was gonna say, Burly. So being 30 degrees, you must feel like Spock in the shuttlecraft.
Oh yes.
So yes, we're gonna get to
My
that.
my
But
ear,
anyway.
I really have to have the headphones up, or you'd see they are pointing up like a Vulcan.
Okay, yeah. So anyway, Children of the Comet. So let's get right into it. So I have to admit, Burly, this episode probably gave more information, like background information, and more screen time to Uhura than we ever got with Nichelle Nichols. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know if you would agree with that, but I mean, they gave her a lot of time in this episode, and we really got to learn about her backstory. Her coming from Kenya, and of course, you know, what happened to her parents and her brother. And I just have to admit, as she was talking about that during the dinner, and we're going to get to the dinner here in a second, but it makes me think, in the 23rd century, it's like when accidents happen, it seems like only shuttlecraft accident disasters happen to people. That's the only way people die in accidents, is by shuttlecrafts or something like that. So yeah. But anyway, I like this first scene where Ortegas is taking her over, and playing her basically, and like say, "Oh, you can't be late." You're wearing your dress uniform. It's you gotta wear that. You know, and it's like, then they get over there, and then the door opens, and Pike, he's got like an apron on, and he's like, he's saying Ortegas, and then he looks at her, and he's like, "Oh, dress uniform,"
yeah.
you know. It's like you
He's
got
just
her.
sitting there drinking.
Yeah, it's like you got her. You know, it's like
Mhm.
just another haze. For a cadet. What'd you think of that scene?
I really enjoyed it. Um, so stuff I really like here compared to Picard, because we had to watch season 2 of Picard, is
Hmm.
this they just let things sit and they let things breathe and they just let a scene play out
Yeah,
and just have like actual dialogue,
yeah, yeah,
which I loved, because just that them you have like you get the banter and how everyone feels between the different crewmates of everyone,
yeah.
which is really nice.
And Celia Rose Gooding, man, she was so good in this episode. She was
She did an
amazing,
amazing job.
amazing job, and I'm sure Nichelle Nichols would have been very, very proud of her to fulfill this role of hers as Uhura. And yeah, I mean, it's like it's a tragic story, but as it's interesting how Pike, when he's asking her, where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Yeah. That
Because
typical question.
well, that, but then of course he kind of stuttered in a sense, because when he said 10 years, that's like he knows like 10 years from now, that's when he's supposed to meet his fate, you know. But anyway, yeah, and then she's like, well, my parents and brother, they died in this, shuttlecraft accident, and so I joined Starfleet basically to get away from the pain. So I'm not really sure if I'm, either made out for Starfleet or not, or if I really want to stay, you know. And then Spock gave her the pep talk, as which he did a lot during this episode, but outside there, he's like, you know, the captain, respects honesty, as do I, and that, you know, uh, I'm just telling you that if you don't want to stay in Starfleet, make room for some other candidates who do, you know.
Yeah,
And I thought that was a really good pep talk at the beginning there. What'd you think?
I enjoyed that because it shows you Spock. It shows he's like, yeah, I totally respect your answer and all that, but if you don't want to be here, that's fine. But
Hmm.
don't hold the position for someone else
Yeah,
that has been working and living and dreaming to be here.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I got to say, man, Pike. It's like in the first episode, he's making pancakes.
Mhm.
So it's like they should just change this into a cooking show with Captain Pike as the lead chef. I mean, it's
Hey,
like
I'll watch that over Picard season 3.
I knew you were gonna say that, man. I knew you were gonna say that. And then the guy that he's the kind of the subspecies Andorian.
Mhm.
Not Andorian. I forget what the species name was. Do you remember, Burly? I'm trying to
Uh,
remember what it was here.
uh, God.
The
Uh,
It's an
I
albino species of subspecies of Andorian. But anyway, oh, the Anar. That's right, the Anar.
Anar, yes.
Anar. So I love that part when he's like getting ready to, he's like chopping the vegetables and stuff, and Spock's standing behind him there, and then Spock tosses the carrot, and he catches it from behind,
Mhm.
knowing that he was going to throw it. That was pretty
Yeah.
cool. And of course the banter between her and Uhura. That was pretty cool. And then Uhura started speaking his language, and then speaking
Mhm.
Vulcan back to Spock. Like seriously. So yeah, I like that part. That was pretty good.
Yeah, that was good. And shows, because that was the thing. Like when they say Uhura in the first episode, I'm like, is she just going to be like one of those background characters you see her every once in a while? But
Yeah,
no, like this episode is so focused on her, which gives me actually a lot of hope for her to see with a lot of the other crewmates
yeah,
that we're going to get episodes focused on them and get more
yeah,
information on them and give us reasons to care about them.
yeah. That's what I think they are focusing on. I think each episode it's going to be a one and done, and it's going to be focused on a particular, crew member. Like this one was Uhura, and then that we have one later on in the season on Spock and others. So yeah, it's going to be cool. So, all right, so we get to this mission now. Of course, there's a comet. heading towards a planet called Persephone 3. And of course, they have to try to change its trajectory. And they try to launch some photon torpedoes that would have some kind of trajectory controls on them to make it change course. But then, of course, there is a force field. And it's like, how
Mhm.
the hell does a comet have a force field? So obviously, we find out that there was some kind of structure there, and only the force field came up when it felt like it was under threat. So once the force field came back down, of course they beamed over. And of course Kirk is, Kirk's brother, is with them on this because he's a specialist, So yeah, so they beam over to it. And yeah, it's like there's this big egg thing sticking there. And then of course Kirk is talking with Uhura, and then he goes up and he tries to, you know, touch it, and the egg didn't like that, and it zapped him.
Mhm.
What'd you think of that? I thought that was the part, like in the original series when Kirk's brother dies there. I thought, okay, that's the part there when he's on the ground there, he's gonna die. But it's like, it's like it's too early in the season to kill him
Yeah,
off, you know?
that seems like a season finale or midway through season. You're gonna have it. You're not gonna do it in the second episode.
Yeah.
That I can understand why you think that.
But I was
Uh,
surprised though, he gets zapped and he's on the ground and he's like, he's not responsive, and then they have to use the EMC thing or whatever. That's pretty cool. Those suits were pretty cool, man. You
yeah,
know, to have that, embedded him then so that they could try to revive him at least and stabilize him. So, yeah. So, but yeah, it's interesting how this thing communicated through music. And of course, Uhura in this episode, like at the dinner and everything, she likes to hum like some Kenyan folk songs. She likes to hum them,
mhm.
and that was what was the beginning of the communication. What'd you think of that? And then, of course, Spock, of course, was giving her another pep talk as well. So, what'd you think of that, Burley?
I really like this because they did something like it wasn't. They bring the fact up earlier, and
Hmm.
it's not just we're bringing this just to give you a fact background on the character. It actually proves something useful in the plot. So
Yeah,
some foreshadowing.
yeah.
I really like that, and I think it worked well. You got her and Spock working together
Yeah, I
well
like the
on
part here.
there.
It's like Spock says, "Your humming suggests you may be experiencing distress. May I remind you that circumstances are less dire than they were. Mr. Kirk identified one error you can avoid. By eliminating that option, he has improved your odds." Then Uhura's like, "Was that actually your version of a pep talk?" And then Spock's like, "Yes, I've been working on them. How was it?" It's like Spock, man.
I'm really liking the actor that does Spock in this.
Oh,
He's
Ethan
doing a
Peck. Ethan
yeah,
Peck.
Ethan
Yes.
Peck. Yeah,
Yeah.
I couldn't remember the name.
Yes, the
Um,
grandson of the late great Gregory Peck. Yes, yes,
he's killing it as Spock,
yeah,
like
yeah,
doing an awesome job.
yeah. Well, it's like they were talking during the dinner. Spock was talking about how when they were talking about Pike's time as an ensign,
Mhm.
and then they were like laughing at the things that had happened to him, and he's like, "I've never understood the human inclination to laugh at others' misfortune. It feels impolite." And then Nurse Chapel's like, "That's why it's funny." And Spock says, "Because it breaks a social expectation." And then Pike says, "Sometimes, Mr. Spock, things go so badly you just have to laugh." And I mean, that was just like this whole episode kind of was like that. Sometimes things just go so badly you just have to laugh, you know.
Yeah,
And Spock learns that as the episode goes on, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, so anyway, so they're able to Uhura and Spock are able to communicate, and then they start humming. But of course, La'an, the chief security officer, she doesn't have any inclination to hum or to sing or to do any of that stuff. She's like, I skipped music class. So, yeah. So she kind of reminds me of Worf, kind of Worf's personality in the Next
Yeah.
Generation, So
Oh yeah. Yeah.
typical chief of security, they're going to have no personality. They're very dry, I guess, in a sense. But
You're just waiting for her to order prune juice.
yeah, yeah. So anyway, let's get farther in. So uh,
Yeah.
now we get these. They're called the shepherds, and they come up,
And
and they're basically telling Pike and the Enterprise, please don't interfere, because this is like a holy event going on in a sense. And then when Pike cuts the communications, they're not shepherds, they're zealots. It's
mhm.
you know. But this ship is very, very powerful. It just it could probably just destroy the Enterprise quite easily in a sense because they were scanning its weapon systems and everything, and then it's like they figured out that they had the away team there that was tampering with the Comet. You know, of course they don't call it a comet; they had a special name for it. So, but yeah, What'd you think of the shepherds?
I thought they were all right. Like there were nothing like
Yeah,
there were nothing. How do I best word this? They served the point for the episode, but there's nothing so unique about these guys that like,
yeah,
ooh, I want to see them come back. You know what I
yeah, yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah.
It doesn't have that appeal like Klingons, Romulans, and stuff like that.
No, 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 no.
No.
Yeah, they referred to the comet as Mahonet. So Mahonet. So yeah. And anyway, so they were saying you tamper with it again, it'll be seen as an act of war and everything. And so it's like they were trying to reason, with these shepherds, we'll call them, I guess, and but they weren't going to have any part of that. So obviously, yeah, it got to the point where okay, let's get them back whichever way we could. And of course, when Uhura and Spock were able to get the force field down again, and with the humming and everything, they were able to beam them back. And then they still had to figure out a way to save the people on Persephone 3, even though they're not a warp driven, technologically advanced species. Still, the comet would have destroyed the entire planet, would have killed everybody. So what did you think of what came up next?
Yeah, I did. I thought it was fine. Like
Mm-hmm.
with or good, I should say, not fine. With them just sitting there and they're trying to think of how do we do this because no matter what we do, this is going to be seen as a sign of aggression here,
Right, right, right.
and we can't let them collide with that planet because it's going to kill the planet.
Yeah,
But how do we get them to just change their course?
right, right. So yeah, I love the part when he goes up to Ortegas and says, it's like, there was this rumor that they were saying, you're one of the best pilot coming out of the academy, and stuff like that. And so then she comes up with her own, you know, uh, like a routine, or some type of maneuver, I should say. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, she was pretty badass controlling the Enterprise there. It's like she was kind of making, Top Gun look, kind of like a like just driving a car on the road. It's like, and it was
As
cool. I
should.
mean, the special effects too, especially, like you could see little bits and pieces of the fragments of the comet hitting the Enterprise, the shields and everything. And, as they were spinning away, it was kind of like, it reminded me in like Star Wars, of course, the, episode 5 when they were going through the asteroid field and stuff. So
Oh
with the
yeah.
Millennium Falcon and everything. But yeah, I mean, it was really cool. And yeah, this was a cool scene. And then of course they get, between the comet and the planet. And then obviously Spock gets in a shuttlecraft and hides, and then they cut all of their engines and cut all of the power except for life support. And then they get back on there with the zealots, or the shepherds, I guess. Yeah. And they're like, we surrender. Our, you know, we need your help because, you know, we're gonna, we can't control the ship now, and it's going to collide with the comet, and then of course with our warp core, it's going to destroy the comet. And obviously, the shepherds don't want the comet to be destroyed because they think it's some like heavenly thing, right? And so, yeah, they bring the tractor beam in, and they're pulling them out, and then of course Spock goes into the comet there, and turns on the heat shield things, and starts to change the trajectory. And as he's doing that, he starts laughing. You know,
Yeah,
what'd you think of that part?
I liked it. Um, I just love that whole scene with them just being like, "Yep, no, we're dead here. Please help us. Please help us. We don't want to collide in your ship. We don't want to cause a problem and all that." And
Right.
then you can just tell they're like, because they're like, "Fine, we'll just help you."
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, and it was cool.
Whereas
And
that, whereas you kind of almost want them to say, "No, we'll just blast you out of orbit. You've
yeah,
caused us enough problems. We'll just blast you out of orbit."
yeah. And then of course the comet changes the trajectory, and then it starts to change the atmosphere of the planet, where it starts to you know uh, become more of a like an atmosphere where plant life and everything could grow, and it started raining and all. And so the people on the planet started to feel the rain drop, and then of course the shepherds started to gloat. It's like, you've seen the holiness and what this thing does, and so Pike's like, okay, yeah, we did, yeah. So, and then of course then they left, and they're not enemies. So uh, and then of course Spock gets back to the ship, and obviously he has another pep talk with Uhura, which was really really cool, telling her that Starfleet would be really you know in a it would really be great to have you to continue on in Starfleet. Starfleet would benefit from having you and stuff. And so that was a really cool conversation there. And then at the end, obviously, uh, we get the scenes in Pike's quarters with number one, and they're talking about, maybe this is a sign that your fate is not sealed when it comes to
It's
10
not
years
written in
from now.
stone.
It's not written in stone, and then of course when he's by himself, he brings up the logs of all of the 10 cadets that he is supposedly going to be saving in the next 10 years. And obviously you see their pictures, and all of them are still kids,
Yeah.
because obviously it's still 10 years away. But yeah, that was interesting. So maybe we're getting small hints here, Burley, that Pike might not end up the way he does in the original Star Trek series. Maybe his fate is not written, and we might get an alternate ending before he leaves the series. What do you think?
Yeah. I I think they're fading it out to that, but my mind is that they're gonna try and change stuff, but in the end it has to be this way,
Okay.
just
Okay.
because they don't want to do some causality loop and all
Okay.
that.
Okay.
I just have a feeling, but who knows? They can always change it, and
Yeah.
I'm fine if they do it well. I'm okay with it.
Yeah, because then it'll be interesting, because in the J.J. Abrams, in the Kelvin timeline, of course, Pike does not end up that way. Obviously, he dies in another fashion, but
Yeah.
he becomes an admiral, of course, as Kirk takes over the Enterprise. So yeah, we shall see. It'll be interesting. But yeah, it was a really cool episode, and I'm really really happy where this is going, and I'm really looking forward to the next episode this coming Thursday. So
Oh,
yeah, so yeah, I highly enjoyed this episode, like I did episode one. So I'm excited for the next episode as well. And as I'm sure you are too, right, Burley? Yeah.
oh yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to the whole rest of the season.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I'm like, whereas the other show, I was like, just as we were going, we were just getting like, why is there one more? Why is there another?
Yeah.
This, I'm like, can you give me episode 3,
Yeah.
please?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. So, of course, this episode will go up to our Patreon at patreon.com/thearena_podcast. And you can check out all of our content on Patreon. Of course, if you want to watch us early and ad free, please consider becoming a patron and help support our content over there on Patreon. And of course, we have a YouTube channel called The Arena Productions, which all of this after early access goes to our YouTube channel as well. So please check us out there. So this has been another episode of Warp Factor 10. So our series on all things Star Trek. And of course, this was our review episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Season 1, Episode 2, Children of the Comet. So I've been your host, Expat, along with my co-host, Burlyman Gaming. We hope to catch you in the next episode. So take care, everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Peace out. Live long and prosper.
I'll praise the comment.